infamous for his white supremacist gang affiliations, led a life defined by criminality and violence. He earned a life sentence for avenging an anonymous TV expose about his gang by murdering his childhood confidant Scott Miller. However, his reign of terror persisted behind bars as he confessed to the ruthless killings of two fellow inmates for petty reasons and the barbarous homicide of a child molester. Johnson rapidly attained notoriety as the prison's most savage inmate. Despite receiving the death sentence following a retrial, he remained remorseless throughout the legal proceedings.
Split up and hit your objectives. I'm setting up a healthy atmosphere for competitiveness. Here's that.
Alexander Solonic, once a feared super
Reshkovsky's cars are part of a shipment headed out to the Pacific any day now. These are professional thieves with money at stake, so don't expect to walk in Sierra
to the
Park.
Russian mafia as a hitman. Despite his incarceration after a string of contract assassinations, his deadly trade flourished behind bars, eliminating numerous prisoners under mafia contracts. After a violent shootout, he made a daring escape, aided by his mob allies. He sought refuge in Greece with a great desire for peace, but the past followed him relentlessly. Tragically, an assassin hired by the mafia took Solonic's life, along with his girlfriend, subjecting him to the same violence that once defined him. Number 8. Randy Kraft. Emerging from ordinary beginnings in California, Randy Kraft's horrific crimes shocked the globe as he was convicted of multiple murders, each victim a grim notch on his spine-chilling tally. This intelligent, captivating
Looks like you're almost at the cargo ship. Get on board, climb the stack, and access the container with the card in it. Then bring the car to my people and we'll get it out of the country.
Affable charm lurked a cold,
The car's a late 50s Lamborghini Casco. Reshkovsky says it's a classic. I call it leverage, and you're gonna think it's a pain in the ass.
diminished by imprisonment, simply transitioning his
Top of the stack. Climb up there and get the car.
reported deaths of fellow inmates hinted at his continued reign of terror, exploiting the prison system to execute his lethal stratagems. Each life claimed further solidified his reputation as one of America's most dread-inspiring convicts. Number 7. Arthur Shawcross. Emerging from humble origins in Kittery, Maine, Arthur Shawcross' life took a dark detour into infamy, etched in blood by his conviction for 14 deliberate, premeditated homicides. His gruesome deeds earned him a haunting moniker and turned him into a symbol of terror. significant threat to guards.
Well done.
Despite
She's on the
this, he
road.
was placed
But
in the
now you
same
gotta
cell
wait till
as
the other
Luis
teams
Romero
deliver the
at
schedule.
Portland State
Let's just
Prison.
hope they do it.
Osuna then
'Cause it's
horrifically
back to the
murdered
start.
his
Do not
cellmate
pass
in
go
an
if
incident
they
too
don't.
disturbing to be detailed on platforms like YouTube. This chilling episode has spurred inquiries, legal proceedings, and concerns about inmate safety within California's prison system. In June 2022, Osuna's trial was paused by a defense request, followed by a change in his legal representation. His new attorney disputes the assertion that Osuna is mentally competent to stand trial
Station
for
team have the
Romero's
schedule.
alleged murder. Number 2. Thomas Silverstein. Thomas Silverstein, a man notorious for his violent deeds in prison, began his criminal odyssey in 1975. Convicted of 3 bank robberies, imprisonment failed to quell his violent tendencies as he was later convicted of murdering another Aryan Brotherhood inmate and then becoming one of them. Later, in a chilling escalation, he was found guilty of a second murder, that of Raymond Cadillac Smith, a high-ranking black prison gang leader. Silverstein and Clay Fountain, another inmate, brutally beat Smith 68 times. In 1983, he plotted and executed the murder of Officer Merle Eugene Klutz, stabbing him 40 times with the help of other inmates. Silverstein was then sentenced to perpetual solitary confinement, living over 36 years in a constantly lit and soundproof cell. Criticized as torture by the ACLU, the Bureau of Prisons created a
Looks like you're almost at
specialized
the
cell
cargo ship.
at
Get
Colorado
on board,
Supermax
climb the
80X
stack, and
prison
access the
to
container with the
contain
car.
Silverstein's
Invite the car
violence,
to my people.
embodying
Get it out
his
of the country.
status as one of the most
Look out for
isolated
their
and
people on the ship.
notorious
You don't want to start a
inmates
fight
in the
with them until you
criminal
have to.
history of the
The car's
USA.
in a locked container at the top of the stack. You need to climb up to it and shoot
Pedro
from the
Rodriguez Filho,
top of the stack. Climb
Brazilian
up there and
serial
get the car.
killer Pedro Rodriguez Filho, notoriously known as the Pedro Killer, admitted to over 100 homicides, including an astonishing 47 within prison walls. Initiated into violence at 14 as a response to his father's job loss, his savagery escalated following his fiance's murder by a gang. Seeking revenge, Filio orchestrated a bloodbath at the gang leader's nuptials, culminating in 7 deaths and 16 casualties. His most chilling act was his prison encounter with his father, also an inmate and his mother's murderer. Filio responded by stabbing him 22 times. After that, he targeted Filio, embodying what he deemed extreme evil, executing a convicted rapist and dispatching his cellmate for overstepping personal boundaries. Despite his brutal vigilantism, a law capping prison terms led to Filio's 2007 release. Today, he maintains a YouTube channel refuting his monstrous image.
You got it. Once you're sure they're not following, bring it
Here
in.
we've recounted the stories of the 10 most notorious inmates whose
Should be
malevolent
obvious, but
acts
we need to
persisted
scurry.
even
Shame to
behind
give to
bars,
Rishkovsky.
casting a grim shadow
Priceless.
over human
Our man's
history.
imminent place
We
on the
deeply
F5
appreciate
most
your
wanted list is going to make him ineligible to
this
take
chilling
insurance
expedition
claims.
with us.
You understand?
For further exploration of such sobering narratives, we invite you to view
Okay, looks like
these
you're
2
sending
additional
people after the
videos.
casco. You need to drop these guys before you bring the car back. Drop as in ice them, or drop as in lose them. I don't mind. I hope you're looking after his car. There's only so much damage we
This
can
is
blame
game
on the
day at
export
Milan,
crew.
and the beauty of
Let's stay in
it begins well before kickoff. We're not just entertainers, we're part of the game.
He's gonna be a problem.
Women are everywhere in football, and just Alcatraz Island, a name synonymous with confinement, isolation, and the chilling echoes of history. Contrary to popular belief, no executions were ever carried out on the rock. Yet its reputation as an inescapable fortress persists. This island, shrouded in mist and mystery, holds a captivating narrative waiting to be unveiled. It's a story of notorious criminals, daring escapes, and the enduring human spirit in the face of adversity. The island's imposing presence in the San Francisco Bay has long captured the imagination. Its very name, derived from the Spanish word for pelican, alcatraces, hints at its early inhabitants. But the island's human history is far more complex, layered with tales of military fortifications, of
Right here with that car.
penitentiary,
Come
transitioned into a military prison in the early 20th century. This marked a shift in the island's purpose, from defense to confinement. The existing fortifications were adapted to hold prisoners of war and military personnel convicted of various offenses. This period foreshadowed the island's eventual transformation into a federal penitentiary. The island's isolation and natural defenses made it an ideal location for a maximum security prison. In 1934, Alcatraz officially became a federal penitentiary, housing some of the most notorious criminals in American history. Its reputation as the Rock, an inescapable fortress, solidified. The cold, turbulent waters of the San Francisco Bay and the sheer cliffs of the island itself created a formidable barrier. The transformation from military fort to federal prison marked a significant turning point in Alcatraz's history. It became a symbol of the government's commitment to containing the most dangerous criminals. This shift in purpose cemented Alcatraz's place in the American cultural landscape as a place of confinement and isolation, a place where even the most hardened criminals were kept under strict control.
Maytag knows that while you may look like your pet,
Look at us.
you don't actually want to wear your pet's hair.
The walls of Alcatraz could tell countless stories, if only they could speak. Within those concrete confines, some of the most infamous criminals in American history served their time. Names like Al Capone, the notorious gangster who built an empire on bootlegging and racketeering, resonate with the era's dark underbelly. Capone's presence on Alcatraz added to the island's mystique. George Machine Gun Kelly, another notorious figure, earned his nickname for his involvement in kidnappings and other violent crimes. His time on Alcatraz further solidified the prison's reputation as a place for the most hardened criminals. The stories of these infamous inmates, and many others, are woven into the fabric of Alcatraz's history. It's called Alcatraz home, each with their own story of crime and punishment. These men, often forgotten in the shadow of the more famous inmates, contributed to the complex tapestry of life within the prison walls. Their stories, though less publicized, are equally important in understanding the full scope of Alcatraz's history. The collective presence of these inmates, from notorious gangsters to lesser-known criminals, shaped Alcatraz's identity. Their stories, whispered within the cells and echoed through the corridors, continue to captivate and intrigue. They serve as a reminder of the human drama that unfolded within the walls of the Rock, a place where confinement and isolation were the ultimate punishments.
Alcatraz's architecture and engineering. Inescapable prison. The island's natural fortifications, including steep cliffs
Look out
and
for their people
treacherous
on the ship.
corridors,
You don't want
were
to start a fight with them
supplemented
until
by
you have to.
man-made
The
structures
car's in a
designed
locked
to
container at the
maximize
top of the
security.
stack. You'll need to
The
climb
cell
up
blocks,
to it and
with
shut
their
open the
small
lock.
Spartan cells, were built to minimize interaction between inmates and prevent escape.
Top of the stack. Climb up
The
there and get in the car.
lighthouse, a prominent feature on the island, served a dual purpose. It guided ships through the often foggy San Francisco Bay, while also acting as a constant reminder to the inmates of their isolation. Its beam, sweeping across the dark waters, symbolized the unreachable freedom that lay beyond the island's shores. The cells themselves were designed for maximum security. Small, cramped, and minimally furnished, they offered little comfort or privacy. The thick concrete walls and steel bars ensured that escape was virtually impossible. Every detail, from the layout of the cell blocks to the construction of the individual cells, was meticulously planned to maintain control and prevent any breach of security. The overall design of Alcatraz was a testament to the ingenuity of its engineers and architects. They created a fortress within a fortress, a place where even the most cunning criminals were held in check. The island's architecture, combined with its natural defenses, made Alcatraz a symbol of confinement and isolation, a place from which escape seemed unimaginable.
Section 5. Escape from the Rock, Legends and Realities. The notion of escaping from Alcatraz has captivated the public imagination for decades. Numerous attempts were made, some meticulously planned, others desperate and impulsive. While the official stance is that no successful escapes occurred, the stories of those who tried continue to fuel speculation and debate. The treacherous waters of the San Francisco Bay and the island's formidable security measures presented almost insurmountable obstacles. One of the most famous escape attempts, known as the Battle of
Look out for their
Alcatraz,
people on the ship.
involved a
You don't want to start a fight with them until you have to. The car's in a locked container
This
at the
incident,
top of the
which
stack.
resulted in
You'll
the
need to
deaths
climb
of
up
several
and
inmates
shoot
and
over the
guards,
lock.
highlighted
Looks
the
like you're almost at the
desperation
cargo
of
ship.
pursuing
Get
freedom.
on board,
It also
climb the
underscored
stack,
the
and
lengths to
access the
which the
container
prison
with the
authorities
card.
would go to
Then
maintain
bring the car
control.
to my people and
Another
get out of the
well-known
country.
attempt, the escape of
Top of
Frank
the stack.
Morris and the
Climb up there and get the car.
remains shrouded in mystery. Their elaborate plan involved crafting dummy heads and navigating the frigid waters using improvised rafts. Despite an extensive search, their fate remains unknown, adding to the legend of Alcatraz. The possibility that they succeeded continues to intrigue and inspire countless theories. While the official record maintains that no one successfully escaped Alcatraz, the stories of these attempts continue to fascinate. They speak to the enduring human desire for freedom, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. The legends of Escape from the Rock have become ingrained in popular culture, further cementing the island's mystique.
Section 6, a cultural touchstone,
Car's in the container.
Native
Shoot the
American
lock to open it up.
occupation and beyond. Alcatraz's history extends beyond its role as a prison. In 1969, a group of Native American activists occupied the island, claiming it as their ancestral land. This occupation, which lasted for 19 months, brought attention to the plight of Native Americans and their struggle for self-determination. It
You
marked
got
a
it.
significant
Once you're sure they're
turning
not
point in the
following,
island's history,
bring it in.
transforming it
Okay,
from a
now bring the
symbol
car to my
of confinement
driver.
to a symbol of
Should be
resistance.
obvious, but we need this
The
car in good
occupation of
shape to get to
Alcatraz became a
Rishkovsky.
powerful
It's meant to
symbol
be
of the Native
priceless.
American
And our
civil
man's
rights movement.
imminent place on the
It drew
FIB
national
most wanted
attention
list
to the
is
issues
gonna
of
make him
treaty rights,
ineligible to make
land
insurance
claims,
claims.
and cultural
You
preservation.
understand? Look after
The
it.
activists' presence on the island challenged the dominant narrative of American history and sparked a renewed dialogue about the relationship between the government and
Hope you're looking
indigenous
after his
peoples.
car.
The
There's only so
legacy
much
of the
damage
Native
we can blame
American
on the export
occupation
crew.
continues to
Bloodstains,
resonate
bullet
today.
holes, burn
It
marks.
served as a
They'll go under
catalyst
general
for
wear and
greater
tear.
awareness and
Anything freaky is
understanding
gonna be a
of Native
problem.
American issues. The occupation transformed Alcatraz from a place of confinement into a place of remembrance and
Okay, looks like they're sending people after the casket. You need to drop these guys before you bring the car back. Drop as in ice them, or drop as in lose them. I don't
a
mind.
place where history, social justice, and human resilience intersect. From its military origins to its time as a prison and beyond, the island's story reflects the complex and often turbulent history of the United States. It serves as a reminder of the importance of remembering the past while striving for a more just and equitable future.
Where are you at with that car? I was
Section
worried about
7.
it taking damage.
Planning
Now
your
I'm worried about
Alcatraz
how many
adventure
miles it'll
tips
have on
and
the clock.
insights.
Plot a course to my
Visiting
driver and
Alcatraz
follow it
Island
quick.
is a unique
Maybe
and
one day
memorable
you'll file a few
experience.
patents,
To make the
head up
most
some
of your
research
visit, it's
projects,
essential to
bring that
plan
knowledge into the boardroom,
Tickets
and
for
be
the
able to
ferry to
afford a
the
car
island
like this
also sell
yourself.
out quickly.
Until
So
that day
booking in
comes,
advance is
don't
highly
think about
recommended.
driving around
This
like you
ensures
own
you
it,
won't miss the
okay?
opportunity to
Pronto,
explore this
people.
fascinating historical site. Consider taking the early morning ferry to avoid the larger crowds and enjoy a more intimate experience. This allows you to explore the island at your own pace and soak in the atmosphere without the hustle and bustle of peak visiting hours. The early morning light also provides stunning views of the San Francisco Bay. Once on the island, be sure to take a look at the which provides valuable insights into the history of Alcatraz and the lives of its inhabitants. adventure. As we conclude our exploration of Alcatraz Island, another natural wonder beckons.
Well done.
Yosemite
She's on the
National
phone.
Park.
But now
From the
you gotta
chilling
wait until the other
confines of
teams
a
deliver
former
the
prison,
schedule.
we'll journey
Let's
to
just
the
hope they do
majestic
it,
grandeur
'cause
of
it's
towering
back to the
granite
start.
cliffs,
Do not
giant
pass go
sequoia
if they
trees,
don't.
and cascading waterfalls. Prepare to be captivated by the raw beauty and untamed wilderness of one of America's most iconic national parks. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history and mysteries of Alcatraz. Be sure and hit the like and subscribe button. We hope you've gained a deeper appreciation for this iconic island and its complex past. Video by Knowledge Abundant. For an incredible me. Stay tuned for our next adventure, where we'll delve into the breathtaking landscapes and natural wonders of Yosemite National Park.
In the United States of America, some of the world's most notorious criminals are locked behind
Stations
bars.
you have the schedule.
One of those is James Robertson. He was sent to prison for violent crimes at an early age.
He wasn't 17 yet. He commits serious offenses, aggravated battery, assault on law enforcement officers.
He is a criminal who has refused to comply.
He escaped with his co-defendant and they were caught. And now he faced another case, another charge, and he got 2 more years consecutive.
He met criteria for psychopathy. That means that engaging in criminal activity, he had very little remorse and very little empathy for all of those acts he engaged in.
Now behind bars, Robertson has targeted those working in the jail.
I was stabbed in the center of the chest, and then he stabbed me one more time in the stomach.
They are people that will kill you as soon as you open your mouth if you say something wrong. You have to be trained for, and if you're not, you're going to end up dead.
He is one of the most feared men in the U.S. prison system.
He's going to be in danger with anyone he comes into contact with because he's so focused on serving his own needs that it really doesn't matter who is in his way.
He actually confronted his cellmate and said to him, I'm going to give you a choice. I can tie you up and torture you and kill you.
Locked away for life, he has nothing to lose.
He started at a young age, and it just went from bad to worse.
Anybody can be collateral damage, and that's what makes him one of the most dangerous criminals.
He had choked him with dental floss, and then he finished with his son.
He's sitting there with a corpse. He's eating breakfast, and he's just sitting there.
Charlotte Correctional Institute is a state prison in Florida, United States.
Charlotte Correctional was a very, very difficult, tough prison. The environment for me working there was the closest thing to being in hell. The smell, the inmates constantly masturbated, they were shouting, they were banging, they were flooding their cells. It was very, very difficult.
On one floor of the prison are a group of prisoners so dangerous they are under watch 24/7.
These aren't just inmates who have assaulted, murdered, and raped in the community. These are inmates that continue to assault and rape and murder while they're in prison. So they require a high level of security, a high level of monitoring.
James Robertson is one of them.
Robertson is probably one of the most dangerous inmates in the United States prison system. He's going to be a danger to inmates, he's going to be a danger to staff, he's going to be a danger to correction officers.
December 19th, 2011, when I came to work and my life kind of changed forever. During my shift, was walking my rounds. James Robertson was in his cell and asked me to take the trash out for him. I made a mistake and opened his cell door and was actually attacked and stabbed by James.
He
was incarcerated, I believe, at the age of 16. Initially, they were nonviolent crimes, but he quickly escalated to violence.
He commits serious offenses: burglary, structure, aggravated assault, and a law enforcement officer, aggravated battery.
He was originally sentenced to 10 years in prison, but once he was incarcerated, he decided that he wanted to go to death row. And so he decided to murder his cellmate in order to get the death penalty.
My name is Ann Otwell, and I've been at Charlotte Correctional as a forensic mental health nurse for 30 years. When I first met James, he was angry. He had been in prison for many years. He had a rap sheet that was unbelievable.
While he was in the prison, he committed some pretty bad crimes. First-degree attempted murder, aggravated battery. He never stopped. Consecutive sentence after consecutive sentence. No stop. And then plotting out a murder. Because that's what he did.
He was probably able to engage in assaults and murder with little to no feeling of any kind of empathy or remorse around that.
Anyone who can commit the crimes he did and not be fazed and continue to commit these crimes, what does he have to lose?
Before James Robertson was first imprisoned, he had lived in Florida his whole life.
James Robertson was born in Orlando, Florida, May 26, 1963. The family ties were not good. It was not what you'd call a Brady Bunch family. My name is Mike Gottfried. I was an officer for the Department of Corrections for a period of 23 years. James Robertson told me that his father beat him. He told me his father was an alcoholic. He told me his mother was an alcoholic. He told me his brothers had been in the prison system.
Robertson had a very tumultuous childhood. He also had a history of abuse. His father used to beat him physically. In addition, he came from a very low socioeconomic background. He had a lot of poverty, and he was not placed in the best schools. He also started engaging in drug use at a very early age. These are all risk factors for James Robertson to go on and engage in criminal activity at a very early age, which is exactly what he did.
On February 25th of 1975, he commits shoplifting. Not a real serious crime. Kids do that all the time.
He had started his crimes at 12 years old, and it just went from bad to worse.
Robertson was hardly ever at school. Instead, he chose to spend his time hanging out in his neighborhood, robbing anyone and anything. He had so far managed to avoid a custodial sentence.
It's like you're skating on ice, but it's starting to splinter. The fact that he does one thing in January and another thing in February sends me the message that he doesn't care. Where is anybody to sit him down? Where is a juvenile counselor to sit him down and speak to him and tell him this is not going to end well?
The brain doesn't fully develop until the age of 24. Some of these juveniles tend to act out, which ultimately ends up having early contact with law enforcement, getting arrested at an early age, and it just becomes a pattern ending up in correctional facilities as opposed to getting the help they require.
In 1978, when Robertson was just 14 years old, a violent attack on 3 youths saw him back in court.
One of the youths had a cut and abrasions on his neck. One was hit in the chest, and one was hit under the right eye, top of the right foot and right leg. He's found guilty of 2 counts. He was committed to youth services for an indeterminate sentence.
Less than a year later, Robertson was kicked out of the school, and it was not long before he was back in trouble with the law.
He wasn't 17 yet. He would be 17 in a couple of weeks, May 26. He commits serious offenses. Burglary, structure. He went in to steal something. The cops came. He threatened the officers. he committed aggravated assault. 2 counts. Don't forget, he burglarized a building, so we don't know what he had in his hand. He said, you come near me and I'm gonna do so-and-so. Well, you just jumped it up to aggravated. Now you have a 3rd-degree felony. Those are serious crimes.
Robertson was seen as a volatile and dangerous individual. He was securely locked away in an adult institution for the first time.
And he was sentenced each count 4 years, state prison. Normally it's concurrent. This judge made it consecutive. So now he's got 8 years. You don't go to prison right away. So he was sent to the county jail.
The county jails are for, pretrial detainees or people who have a sentence of less than a year. People usually think that a county jail is where, it's smaller crimes and things like that, but we actually have a wide array of inmates there, very wide spectrum, including people who are on death row or doing life sentences.
He's in the county jail. You think he would learn? No, not him.
After being behind bars for just 3 months, Robertson had had enough and plotted an escape.
He escaped with his co-defendant and they were caught. And now he faced another case, another charge, and he got 2 more years consecutive. Now he's looking at 10 years. All of his arrest record, and I'm seeing absolutely no remorse.
Robertson was transferred to a maximum security state prison.
You can't compare a maximum security prison to a county jail. There's just no comparison. He's a 17-year-old.
Okay,
now he's going to the state prison. And he's a newbie. He's never been in a state institution. And there are some really bad guys in state prison. Most people that age would really be afraid.
What's interesting about Mr. Robertson is that after he was arrested and initially sentenced to 10 years in prison, 10 years is a long time, it's not a real sentence, he continued to engage in really egregious criminal activity in prison, including stabbing and riots. Prisons obviously are a dangerous place to work because they house people who have engaged in violent crimes and things like rape and murder and assault and batteries.
For new inmates coming in, it's a different world.
We have a lot of older inmates who preyed on the younger inmates. It's a difficult situation to be in, especially if you are brand new to the correctional facilities.
One of the first inmates, 17-year-old James Robertson, encountered was Efren Yura, whose wheelchair was by
security detail. The good news is
on the exercise where I work in Mexican walked up to me, little blonde-haired, blue-eyed white kid, said, "Hey, Jan, this little white boy just got off the bus." Well, when I saw him, I laughed, walked up to him, and said, "You're cute," and I pinched his face. Well, no sooner than I touched his face, this scrawny little runt, scarcely weighing 126 pounds, soaking wet, hauled off and swung on me, hitting me in the face.
Robertson had quickly learned how to stay alive.
And a lot of them will look for protection from other inmates. There are gangs in the prison system, whether it's a black gang, Hispanic gang, skinheads, the supremacists or stuff like that. So it's what direction are you going to turn? Who is going to help you and at what cost? There's always a price.
Couldn't believe this little runt swung on me. Before I knew it, he ran for a crowbar that was lying on the ground in the white pile, grabbed it, and he was cocking it back to swing it at me. I moved in and took him down.
The prison bus is set to move. They're holding a grade X inmate class to national security risk.
Okay, Shorty, I'm sorry. I'm gonna let you get up. I don't want any more trouble from you.
The authorities will think we're trying to break him out,
Just
and they'll be distracted from what's really going on. Believe me?
Okay.
So we need the bus
And then, never did
The way
again.
to do that is neutralizing the driver.
That was
Just
how
so
I
you know.
met James Robertson, a.k.a. Chickenhead, way back in 1981. He was 17 years old then.
Demographically, most of the young white guys who thought they were real tough on the outside, they come to state prison and, to prove himself.
If James Robertson had kept his head down, he could have walked free from prison before he turned 30. But that just wasn't going to happen. At the age of 17, James Robertson, also known as Chickenhead, was sent to state prison after being convicted of burglary, aggravated assault, and attempted escape. He was sentenced to 10 years behind bars.
So I don't know if he would have gotten paroled. I really don't know. But he would have been done. Only 27 years old.
James Robertson had initially got protection from an older prisoner, Ephraim Yera.
I told the predators who were stalking him and wanted to rape him that he was no punk and wasn't going to be a punk, and that I was enforcing that. Unfortunately, I ended up getting into a fight and was transferred. After I left, Chickenhead got into with somebody who tried him and transferred to Cross City Correctional Institution.
This was the beginning of the end for Robertson.
He was transferred from facility to facility. If he committed a crime in there, if there was fighting, if there was an assault, then they'll ship him out to another prison. And in his case, he went back and forth a lot. He was bouncing around like a rubber ball from one institution to another, and nothing slowed him down.
Everywhere Robertson went, trouble was not far behind.
From 1985, these crimes that were committed: transmitting contraband in a state facility, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, introducing a weapon into a state facility, escape, battery on a law enforcement officer, constructive possession of a weapon.
I've come across a multitude of weapons: stabbing devices, slashing devices, batteries, and rocks inside of a sock so they swing around and hit you on the head with it. When they really want to kill somebody and they're really desperate and they don't have access to making weapons, what they will do is they will cut out a piece of their cell, their locker. They'll get a needle, because the needle is made out of titanium, and they will trace over and over and over again until they punch it out. And when they punch out that piece of metal, they sharpen it. And that's how they make what's known as a bone crusher. And they call it a bone crusher because it's deep enough to penetrate the bones.
Every time Robertson got into trouble, more years were added to his sentence.
He got caught up in some situations at different prisons where they said he had stabbed someone. He caught more time trying to escape, more time when they took him from the jail to the courthouse. I believe he took the officer's gun and was going to shoot him. He caught more time. He ended up life.
Everything is running consecutive. I have to quickly envision this in my mind as how many years this kid is looking at, and nothing stops him.
It seems like criminal activity became a norm for him. Most inmates go to prison and they just do their time and go home. But you have your exceptions. And typically the common denominator would be that they have antisocial personality disorder and or they're psychopaths, especially if they are the world's most dangerous criminals.
As Robertson's violence escalated, so did the punishments.
He's a threat to officers. They can't control him. Look what he's doing. He's a threat to inmates because he's fighting with them. And basically he's a threat to himself because sooner or later he's going to get his. When inmates start to fight, officers have to break it up. It's not always an easy task, and you can get hurt. Then he's going to be reviewed for close management because he is a danger.
In 1988, James Robertson was sent to close management, also known as CM.
Close management inmates are on 23-hour lockdown. Perimeter area, also surrounded by razor wire. Fed through a food slot. You might have inmates in there that have committed aggravated battery on law enforcement officers. All kinds. But they can't walk the compound to other inmates or officers. So basically, it is confinement for 23 hours in a 6x8 cell. The only saving grace, I guess, for them is the fact that they're not sharing that cell with no inmate.
There is no television, there are typically no books, there are typically nothing to occupy their time. And so that gives inmates a lot of time to engage in maladaptive behaviors and more criminal activity, such as using drugs, such as fighting. On with his psychopathic and criminal tendencies.
For the next 18 years. In 2006, he was sent to Charlotte Correctional Institution.
I worked at Charlotte Correctional Institution until 2021. Charlotte Correctional was a maximum security prison. Although Charlotte was one of the cleanest prisons that I had been at, the heat was unbearable, and the inmates got showered 3 times a week. So you can imagine walking into a quad, the stench would just hit you. It was like being in a sewer.
At the time he went to Charlotte County in 2006, he was already, at that time, 43 of custody. If you add up all these years consecutively, I'd have to get a calculator out.
As soon as he arrived, Robertson was put into close management again.
The noise was constantly yelling, banging, hollering at each other, foul words. Most of the noise from CM was at night. They were up all night long, banging, yelling all night long. So during but at night it was even worse.
The years of close management had taken a toll on James Robertson.
We have a lot of mental health in the prison system. If you aren't having problems when you go in the system, you will have problems. If you've got a long, drawn-out sentence, you will.
Robertson also had a drug problem.
When somebody is addicted to substances, they are more likely to engage in high-risk behaviors as a direct result of those substances, as well as in attempt to get money for those substances.
Being a forensic mental health nurse is taking care of inmates who are on psychotropic drugs. A nurse that takes care of the mentally insane and mentally challenged people in the prison system. James Robertson was one of my patients. His anger was just unbelievable. He was a big man to begin with. He had this passive-aggressive behavior with us. He had been on every drug, crack, LSD, cocaine, marijuana, K2. He had been on everything in his life in the system. Everything. You name it, he was on it.
Having been in the highest level of close management for many years, James Robertson was eventually moved to a lower level known as CM3.
CM3, they have a cellmate. It's a gradual increase of freedom, so to speak, from lockdown 23/7. Between all the offenses that he committed in the prison, the fact that he was in CM3 was kind of a miracle. Because it's a gradual step towards release to the compound with general population. But even if it's CM3, you are still confined. This is a guy who spent maybe 20 years in close management custody, and you reach a breaking point.
It was too much for Robertson. He made his ultimate wish clear to anyone that asked.
James always told me, I hate it here, I'm going to be on the road. Because you people treat me like a dog, like an animal. I hate close management. I want to be on the road and quiet. I don't want to go on open population.
maybe I'm wrong, but when he said, I want to make a statement, I want them to take me seriously, maybe in the back of his mind, the death penalty, now they're going to take me seriously. I did it, and I died. But personally, if he really wanted to die, he could have killed himself. I think he was a coward.
While in CM3, James Robertson met his new cellmate, 52-year-old Frank Hart.
Frank Hart was a sex offender, and I believe he was close to being released. He really didn't like Frank Hart. I don't think he liked the idea that he was a sex offender.
And he told them, do not put a pedophile in my cell. And unfortunately, Frank Hart was a pedophile. And when they put him in James's cell, he realized that this was his way out. He was going to kill him.
On December 10th, 2008, James Robertson decided it was the moment to act on his plan.
They were alone in a cell. He's been in close management enough to know the routine of cell checks. The breakfast comes and it goes through the food slot. James Robertson ate his breakfast and Hart's breakfast. An officer came in to do the cell check just to make sure everything was okay. And of course, things were not okay.
I got a call from one of the nurses that was passing meds, and James had given her a note and said, don't bother to give Frank Hart his medicine. I killed him yesterday.
James Robertson had strangled his cellmate Frank Hart to death the night before.
James Robertson took socks and he tied them together. He did the deed. He strangled inmate Hart.
After being moved to a less strict level of close management, James Robertson had attacked and killed his cellmate at the first opportunity.
When we got Frank Hart up to the medical department in our emergency room, I saw the dental floss around his neck. And he had first choked him with the dental floss, and then he finished with the sock. And that was the day before.
This was not a quick and easy murder. This was something that was torturous. Robertson later on stated that he had murdered Mr. Hart because he was a sex offender, which we all know sex offenders tend to be low on the totem pole in correctional facilities. However, I'm not convinced that that's really the reason Mr. Robertson murdered Mr. Hart. What I believe is that he was a convenient target. But at the end of the day, Mr. Robertson was going to murder whoever was going to be the most convenient for him to get sent to death row.
James Robertson was now facing a murder conviction.
I personally never had an inmate tell me they wished they were on death row, like in the case of James Robertson, but I have had inmates tell me that they wouldn't mind killing their cellmate to have single cell status, which means being alone in their cell.
I always knew that he wanted to be on death row. I just never knew what he was going to do or when it was going to happen. But it didn't surprise me with him, especially with James. We were transferring Hart to another prison, but I don't believe that James knew that. Usually the inmates know everything. They know it before we know it.
Robertson was charged with murder. Sentencing.
My name is Barry Amoli, and I am a former corrections deputy with the Charlotte County Sheriff's Department. Basically, in there we were a direct supervision facility, which means we were directly in with the inmate population.
Barry Amoli was working at Charlotte County Jail in October 2009 when James Robertson was transferred there for hearings on his murder charge. Robertson was back in the highest level of close management, CM1.
James Robertson was at an elevated custody level with us, not somebody who could be around other inmates or put in general population He was CM1 close management, a completely different set of rules than the open population inmates in the regular pods. The inmates in his particular area, most of them were looking at a long prison sentence. They got their hour of recreation several times a week, hours, but they were confined.
Barry Amoli knew James Robertson from the various periods he had been incarcerated at the jail.
James Robertson was an individual among a bunch of characters, and he was different. He was an institutionalized person who'd been in prison for a very long time. He didn't want problems that he didn't need. He didn't create a lot of issues. He was quiet, always very respectful to me.
James Robertson was charged with second-degree murder, but fired various defense lawyers because he wanted to be charged with first-degree murder and be sent to death row.
He had about 7 attorneys, I think. I lost count.
He wanted to be put to death because he's had enough of this life behind the door for all these years, and he's just tired of it.
Most inmates do not want to go to death row. They don't want to be put to death. However, there is this rumor around prisons that death row is very cushy.
He wanted to go to death row because he wanted to get away from everybody. And death row is quieter. Death row is smaller. He doesn't have to deal with all the things that are going on in close management. Ultimately, he just wanted to be out of this life.
James always seemed to me that he had something in mind. I really do feel like he had a very dangerous thought process that was constantly going in his mind. He was always analyzing, he was always looking, he was quiet, and the quiet ones are sometimes the most dangerous. So he wasn't the biggest, strongest, wasn't the one who was going to kick the door off the hinges and come get you. But you'll make a mistake and he'll figure a way, and he's going to accomplish what he wants to accomplish.
Robertson was still searching for an opportunity to escalate his sentence.
So this is why I walked into the facility December 19th, 2011, and began my shift. I worked the maximum segregation unit, which was where James Robertson was housed.
They are people that would kill you as soon as you opened your mouth if you said something wrong, if they weren't behind the gate. It's not something that you want to be exposed to. It's something that you have to be trained for, and if you're not, you're going to end up dead.
James knocked on his door and asked me to empty his garbage. When he asked me to do that, typically we take the garbage through the food flap, but he started spilling everywhere and making a mess, so I just, without thinking, put my key in and opened his door so he wouldn't make a mess. As soon as I put the key in and opened the door, James rushed the door, attempted to push it open. I tried to stop him from coming out of the cell, but it was too late. He was already too far out, so at that point the fight was on. James had fashioned 2 long pieces of metal that were pointy. He had sharpened them. He had used a t-shirt to fashion handles on them and then bladed wrist straps so that they were attached to him and they were coming through his hands, kind of like Wolverine. He stabbed me in the arm the first time as he was trying to get out the door. It was on.